In the heart of the great Igandu Valley, where the sun kissed the hills and the baobab trees told stories to the wind, there lived a little girl named Amina. Her voice was like the chirping of morning birds, her laughter as light as millet husks carried by the wind. But joy is often fleeting in the lives of children who lose their mothers too early. Amina's mother, Malika, had died giving birth to her, leaving her in the arms of her grieving father, Bako. Bako was a fisherman, strong and quiet like the river he worked upon. The villagers said he was as reliable as the rising sun, and his nets never came home empty. But grief had a way of dulling even the sharpest blades, and for many years Bako moved through life as if sleepwalking. He raised Amina with gentleness, wrapping her in love like a weaver folds fine kente cloth. As Amina grew, so did the whispers of the village women. A man cannot raise a child alone, they would say behind cupped palms. He needs a wife, someone to care for the child properly. A girl needs a mother's hand. And so, in the season when the rain clouds gathered and the frogs began to sing again, Bako took a new wife. Her name was Nalia, and she came from a faraway village, her eyes dark and calculating like the mongoose that waits in tall grass. At first, Nalia was kind. Her smile was like the dry season rain, brief and unreliable. She cooked hearty stews, swept the compound clean, and told the villagers she had come to build a family. But under the roof where only 3 now lived, her true heart unfolded like a thorny vine. She did not love Amina. To the villagers, Nalia was all sweetness, but when no one was watching, her voice would change, sharp and full of contempt. It began with small cruelties. Amina, why do you walk like a goat with no purpose? Sweep that floor again. But I just swept it, Mama Nalia, Amina would protest. Nalia's eyes would narrow. Are you calling me a liar? You think because you're Bako's daughter, you're special. And Amina, barely 8, would lower her eyes and sweep the floor again, her small fingers brushing away the invisible dust of injustice. Life in Igandu Valley continued as it always had, rhythmic, seasonal, rooted in tradition. But within Bako's compound, things were changing. Nalia began to withhold food from Amina. She eats like a greedy hyena, she said one night, dishing only plain porridge into Amina's wooden bowl while serving herself and Bako meat and greens. Bako, tired and unaware, ate with the hunger of a man who had spent all day on the river. You're too quiet tonight, little one, he said to Amina. I'm fine, Baba, Amina replied, forcing a smile. She would not trouble her father. She saw how his shoulders sagged, how his eyes no longer lit up as they once had. He was trying, and she would not make it harder. But hunger has a way of speaking through the body. Amina grew thinner, her cheeks hollow, her arms like the thin branches of a guava tree. She missed her mother more than ever and often snuck out at night to sit by the river where Bako fished. There she would speak into the wind, telling her mother about her day. One night she whispered, Mama, why did you leave me with someone who doesn't love me? The river, in its usual way, answered with silence and the soft splash of a frog. It wasn't long before Nalia escalated her torment. She made Amina sleep outside on a mat, claiming she needed the space inside for her sewing. When Bako asked, she said, the child tosses and turns too much. I can't sleep. But Bako had grown used to surrendering to Nalia's reasons. His mind, clouded by worry and exhaustion, did not question. One rainy night, thunder cracked across the sky like the whip of the gods. Amina, soaked and shivering outside, huddled beneath a banana leaf. A neighbor, old Mama Tatu, saw her the next morning and brought her a dry cloth. Why are you out here, child? She asked. Amina hesitated. I like sleeping under the stars. Mama Tatu squinted. Don't lie to an elder, little river fish. I've seen your bruises. The gods see too. But Amina remained silent, her lips sealed by fear. Mama Tatu took her story to the village council, but Nalia was clever. She wept before them, accusing Amina of being wild, rebellious, and deceitful. She breaks things, curses me when Bako is away. Do you know she once stole my necklace and claimed a spirit gave it to her mother? The elders, unsure whom to believe, looked to Bako. She is not lying, Bako said slowly. Amina can be difficult, but she is still a child. That half-hearted defense condemned Amina further, but stories in the valley, like termites under wood, never stop moving. They reached the ears of a woman named Mshana, a healer and elder who lived at the edge of the forest. She was known for her wisdom and her connection to the ancestors. Her compound was shaded by medicinal trees, and children came to her when they had dreams they could not understand. One day, as Amina fetched water at the river, Mshana appeared like a breeze. Child of Malika, she said softly. I have seen you. Amina dropped her calabash. You knew my mother? Malika braided my hair when I was pregnant with my son. She had hands like music and eyes like yours. Tears filled Amina's eyes. She left me too soon. No, Mashana said. She is watching, and she sent me. That night, Mashana gave Amina a small bag of herbs and whispered, Place this under your mat tonight. Your mother will come to you in a dream. Amina did as she was told. That night, she dreamed of a woman dressed in white, standing beside the river, holding out her hands. You are not alone, the woman said. The earth watches. The ancestors remember. Be patient. When Amina awoke, her body felt lighter, as if the weight of sorrow had shifted. From that day, she began to change. Though Nalia continued her cruelty, Amina grew in resilience. She learned to speak gently, to work quickly, to sing softly to herself as she cooked, washed, and cleaned. She even began to help old Mama Tatu sweep her compound, earning bits of roasted maize and kindness. Mashana taught her how to read the clouds, how to mix healing roots, and how to listen when silence had something to say. A woman's strength, Mashana told her, is not only in her arms but in her heart and her silence. You, Amina, are stronger than you know. Seasons passed in Igandu Valley and Amina grew like a cassava root, quiet, strong, hidden beneath the soil of suffering. She turned 10, then 11. Her hands were calloused from pounding yam, her back familiar with burdens meant for women, not children. But her spirit did not break. Mashana's wisdom was her secret garden, where strength bloomed even in drought. Nalia, however, grew more bitter. Her womb remained silent and she blamed Amina for it. Your mother cursed me, she hissed one night. She left her ghost behind to poison my belly. You walk around this house with her eyes, her laugh, like a haunting. Amina said nothing. She had learned the value of silence, not weakness, but power. She knew that when people poured out poison, it was best not to drink from their cup. Still, Nalia's bitterness deepened. She began to lock away food, claiming Amina had grown too fat. She made her wash clothes in the river long after sunset and sent her to fetch firewood in the lion's hour. Once she cut Amina's hair with a rusty blade, muttering, Maybe now the spirits will forget you. The only light came from Mashana and Mama Tatu, who continued to nourish her with hidden kindness, gifts of fruit, whispered proverbs, and teachings from the old ways. One evening, as the first stars blinked into the purple sky, Mashana handed Amina a carved wooden pendant. This belonged to your mother, she said. She gave it to me when she was pregnant with you. It is an amulet of protection. Amina traced the shape, a river carved into the center like the one she often sat beside. She was brave, Mashana said. So are you, but bravery must sometimes speak. What do you mean? Amina asked. Soon the ancestors will call for justice. You must be ready to answer. It happened in the season of long rains. The river had swollen, licking at the edges of the fields. Frogs sang from every puddle and the drums of thunder rolled like distant wars. Beko had gone upriver for a 3-day fishing journey. Nalia, in her usual cruelty, sent Amina to gather mushrooms in the forest. And don't come back without enough to fill this basket, she warned. Amina knew the forest well by then, thanks to Mashana, but that day the air felt wrong. The wind carried a strange tension like a drum stretched too tight. She moved carefully, picking mushrooms beneath tamarind trees and near termite mounds. Suddenly she heard a cry, not human, not animal, but desperate. She followed it and found a baby antelope caught in a hunter's snare. Its leg was bleeding, eyes wide with terror. Compassion overruled caution. She crouched down, spoke softly, and freed it, cutting the rope with a sharp stone. It limped away into the underbrush, pausing only once to look back as if in thanks. But in her kindness, Amina lost track of time. The forest dimmed, and by the time she returned, the basket only half full, Nalia was waiting with rage. You disobedient little snake, she shrieked. Without waiting, she grabbed a hot wooden ladle from the fire and struck Amina across the shoulder. The girl collapsed, crying out. That cry was heard. Mama Tatu, gathering herbs nearby, stormed into the compound. What are you doing? She bellowed. She's defiant. She disrespects me, Nalia yelled. She is a child, Mama Tatu shouted. And you are no mother. Within hours, the story spread. The next day, the village elders called a gathering under the talking tree. Beko had just returned, weary and sun-darkened, his canoe heavy with fish, but his heart heavier still. They sat in a circle, Mashana, Mama Tatu, the elders, Beko, and even Nalia, her face painted with lies. Amina stood before them, silent and trembling. Speak, child, said Elder Kamal, oldest in the village. Amina's voice was barely more than wind. She does not feed me. She makes me sleep outside. She beats me. She says I'm cursed. She lies, Nalia snapped. But the crowd murmured. Whispers had grown into voices. Mama Tatu had kept records. Bruises, nights Amina slept outside, food she'd hidden and shared. Others stepped forward. One spoke of a night Amina cried by the river. Another recalled seeing her fetch water at midnight. Even Bako, slow to believe, could no longer deny the truth. His hands trembled as he stood. I was blind, he said, but no more. Nalia stood, her eyes blazing. You all turn against me after all I've given? This girl has poisoned you. But Elder Kamal raised his hand. Enough! The ancestors have seen the spirits of justice walk among us tonight. He turned to Bako. You must choose your daughter or this woman who has brought rot into your home. The silence was thick. Bako looked at Amina, then at Nalia. I choose the river that flows true. I choose my blood. Nalia was exiled, not from the village entirely, but from Bako's home. She left that night, cursing the wind, promising the gods would avenge her. But in truth, she faded like a shadow under the rising sun. Bako, ashamed, tried to make amends. He built Amina a bed from acacia wood, carved her name into the headboard. He asked for forgiveness, and she gave it, slowly, quietly, as trust returned. Amina continued to visit Mashana, learning more each day. She ground herbs, healed wounds, interpreted dreams. By 13, she was known across the valley as Mwana wa Malkia, the daughter of the queen. People brought their sick to her, their troubled children, their questions for the spirit world. She spoke with calm and kindness, her words like water, shaping stone over time. One day, while sitting beneath a baobab with Mashana, Amina asked, Why did I have to suffer so much? Mashana smiled. The river carves its path through stone, not out of hatred, but out of purpose. You were not broken, you were shaped. 3 years passed and the valley flourished. Rain came at the right times, harvests were bountiful, and the people of Igandu whispered that the gods were pleased. Amina, now 16, had blossomed into a young woman with poise far beyond her years. Her eyes still held the deep sadness of childhood wounds, but her smile had returned, calm and steady like sunrise on still water. She had become Mashana's apprentice in full, tending to villagers with herbs and prayer, guiding lost souls through dreams, and learning the language of leaves, bones, and clouds. When people came to her, they called her Amina wa Maji, Amina of the water, because they said her spirit flowed through everything she touched. Every year, the village held the Festival of Masks to honor the ancestors. It was a celebration of renewal, identity, and storytelling. That year, the elders chose Amina to perform the rite of truth, a sacred dance and tale told only by those deemed worthy to speak between the worlds. Some elders objected. She is too young, muttered one. Her past is too complicated, said another, but Mashana stood and raised her staff. The ancestors do not ask for age or a perfect past. They ask for truth, and who among us has lived closer to truth than this child? And so it was decided. Amina would dance before the shrine of Ogoya, goddess of justice. For 7 days she prepared. She fasted, bathed in river water mixed with crushed lilies, and listened to Mashana's old songs. On the final night, she carved her mask from palm wood. It bore no colors, no ornaments, just the shape of her face, smooth and unadorned. The truth needs no decoration, she whispered. When the drums called on the 8th night, the entire village gathered beneath the moon. Fires flickered like stars scattered on the ground. Dancers leapt, acrobats spun, and the air rang with ululations. And then, silence. Amina stepped forward, her bare feet brushing the earth, her mask in hand. She raised her head, and when she placed the mask over her face, the crowd held its breath. She began to dance. It was not a dance of rhythm alone. It was a story in movement. She swayed like the river, stumbled like a child in pain, crawled like one beaten, then rose again with arms outstretched like wings. She told of sorrow and betrayal, of the quiet power of endurance, of healing born from wounds. When she finished, she removed her mask and spoke. Truth walks slowly, but it always arrives. Justice sleeps lightly, and she always wakes. I am not the child of shame. I am the daughter of survival, and no mask can hide a soul forever. The crowd stood in stunned silence. Then slowly they began to clap. First Mama Tatu, then the children, then everyone. The air was filled with drums and cheers. The ancestors, they said, had spoken through her. But peace is never without testing. One dusty afternoon, as the dry season crept in, a traveller arrived in the village. Clad in a faded blue wrapper, her face hidden beneath a headscarf, she walked with a limp. Few recognized her at first until she stood in the market and called out, "I seek Bako, the fisherman. I seek Amina." It was Nalia, the same woman who had vanished in exile, once feared and whispered about, now returned gaunt and weather-worn. Her eyes were no longer sharp, they were tired, filled with something strange, regret. People stared. Some murmured, "She dares come back." Others said, "What does she want?" Bako came to the market, cautious. Amina followed behind him. When Nalia saw her, she sank to her knees. "I was cruel," she said. "I was wrong. I was consumed by bitterness, and now the spirits torment me. I have no child, no family, no peace. I have come not for forgiveness. I know I may never deserve it. I have come to confess so that I may die with a lighter soul." The silence in the market was heavy. Amina stepped forward, her voice calm. "You used to call me a curse. Do you now see who I truly am?" Nalia nodded, eyes brimming. "Then go," Amina said, "to the shrine of Agoya. Sit there until the wind answers your prayer, and speak your confession aloud so that even the trees may hear it." Nalia obeyed. She wept at the shrine for 3 days. Some say the birds stopped singing during that time. Others say they heard her talking to ghosts. When she returned, she did not ask for shelter. She simply knelt before Amina and whispered, "Thank you." Then she left, heading toward the hills alone. With the past finally buried in forgiveness, a new life blossomed. Bako, once hunched with guilt, walked taller again. He built a small clinic beside the river for Amina and Mashana so that those in pain would not need to climb the hills for healing. Young girls gathered there seeking wisdom. Amina taught them what she had learned, that survival was not shameful, that pain was a teacher, and that silence could be a weapon or a prison, depending on how one wielded it. Mama Tatu, now old and slow, would often sit by the fire and tell visitors, "That girl, she was carved by the gods themselves. I saw it with my own eyes." The village prospered. They honored Amina with a new name, Nyota ya Ukweli, Star of Truth. People from far-off regions came to hear her speak and ask for guidance. But Amina never forgot who she had been. Every year on the night of her mother's death, she went to the riverbank alone. She carried the wooden pendant Mashana had given her, pressed it to her lips and whispered, "Mama, I have survived, I have become. You planted me in pain, but I have grown in truth." Years passed. Amina became a legend in Igandu. Some said she could heal by touch. Others claimed she spoke with the ancestors in her dreams. But those who knew her best said she is simply a girl who chose not to become what broke her. Before Mashana died, she passed her staff to Amina. "You have seen what most never survive. Use that truth not to wound, but to build." And she did. By the time Amina reached her 30s, she had trained other healers, both boys and girls. Her teachings spread beyond the valley. Her story was told in festivals, written into chants, painted onto walls. But she remained humble. When asked what made her strong, she would always say, "Pain is the fire, but choice is the pot. We decide what we become." She married a quiet man from a neighboring village, a weaver who loved rivers and silence. They had 2 children, whom she raised with softness and discipline, wrapped in the wisdom she had earned. And when her daughter once asked, "Mama, why do people say you are a hero?" Amina smiled. "Because I learned that even the smallest river carves through stone, if it does not stop flowing." The end.